Yeah, there's nothing worse than a salesperson that would come in and all they do is talk the whole time.
Sure.
How can you know what my needs are if you don't ever breathe long enough to let me
Right.
tell you about? So I would, that's sort of our strategy too here within Village Caregiving. What I think the business development team preaches is you really have to be a good listener. That will sell the product. You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to be a nice, honest person. But then I think the biggest key to it is really honestly just listening to the other person.
Yeah. Welcome to the Secret VCG Experience, where we get to know the people behind Village Caregiving. We're your hosts, Aaron Gustin and Jeff Stevens. In this podcast, we have casual conversations with the individuals that make up VCG. Join us as we sit down to hear their stories, share a laugh, and learn about the importance of human connection in home care. So sit back, relax, and let's get to know the people of Village Caregiving.
What do you want to talk about today?
Well, I'll tell you what I want to talk about. Number one, I want to talk about just being back on the podcast, right? We're back from some travel. I feel like I have seen the world.
In Chicago?
Yeah, well, Chicago
and Vancouver.
Yeah, I've been everywhere, man. I've crossed the deserts. Nope. Okay.
That took 27 seconds in for you to start in on country music.
I know, it's really bad.
Is that country music?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, I think it's probably an oldies either way, but I think you're going to find it on a country's hit somewhere.
You mentioned another guy earlier today named Keith Whitley.
Keith Whitley, yeah.
Who's that?
Oh, he was a really popular mid to late 80s country music star that had an untimely death. So he was kind of gone before his time.
I just nodded along, but I have no idea.
Well, for a person that has such a music background like you do, I would have thought that it's fine. I bet I can though play a piece of a Keith Whitley song.
Please don't.
That you would know. Yeah, for sure. I know you're wanting to see this and hear it. No, he does really have some. I bet you've heard the country music song "Don't Close Your Eyes."
No. Sing it.
When You Say Nothing at All.
Okay, that one sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's his.
Wait, but that's because I heard a cover version of it by a female.
That's
artist.
not.
Oh God, you're playing it on here? I have to admit, I do know that song.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Keith Whitley, for people that don't know that may be listening internationally, Keith Whitley was actually from Sandy Hook, Kentucky, which is in our Ashland, Kentucky service area. There's a memorial for him at Sandy Hook. And
I thought there's a lake down by the Sandy Hook in Kentucky.
Yeah, Cave Run. Yeah, Cave Run. It's a beautiful lake. So anyways, that's where he's from. And also the Ashland area is notorious for country music stars. The Judds are from there. Naomi and Winona Judd, and also Billy Ray Cyrus is from Flatwoods, Kentucky. So
okay.
Anywho,
I can't let this go on for more than 3 minutes.
Do you know what happened today?
I know what.
We were recognized from our podcast.
We were.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, do you feel now like you've achieved?
Well, I told
everything.
Daniel I've lost complete anonymity. How's that word go?
Anonymity.
I've lost it. I feel now as if.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now I'm so recognized. So the story is that a lady came into the office that was here to do a presentation. She lives hours away from here. Mm-hmm. We have no connection to her except that we had a conversation. Apparently one of the department heads here had a conversation with her. And she was looking for one of the department heads and said, "Hey, I have a meeting with this person." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll take you over and let you see him." And she said, "Are you Aaron?" And I you have that frantic, like, "Oh God, do I know you? Like, should I have known you? I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And I look at her, I'm like, yeah. How did you know who I was? She said, "Oh, I recognize you from the podcast." I about fell over. What a crazy experience. And then she did the same thing to you when she came over.
Yeah, and I really did. I thought I must have done a demo with her on the payroll solution system before. I didn't know, but yeah, I said, "I'm sorry. Have we met?" She said, "Now let's be real here."
Yeah.
She only knows about the podcast because she was doing her homework on Village Caregiving That's how she came across it. But it's a quasi out of the company person.
Well,
Eh?
I can tell you it blew my mind.
Right. It
Yeah.
still felt good
Yeah.
anyways. Like,
I was thankful though. We just got back from the Chicago meeting. I was thankful that I was able to still go out on the streets of Chicago and not be recognized. It was nice to still have that privacy.
yeah.
So,
Were you worried about that?
well, I brought some change of clothes, a couple hats just in case,
Right.
but we were able to enjoy the Cubs game without any real, I think, paparazzi issues.
Hmm.
So that was nice.
She, the lady that we're talking about, she was really professional, really
She
nice.
was. It's always interesting to see people that come here to like demonstrate their products or to sell their products or to try to incentivize us to partner with them because we're all the time talking with directors about going out and marketing, right? And
Hmm.
going out and doing that hard job of showing up after you've set the appointment and walking in and introducing your product. And because you, as you said, the impression you got from her was very professional and very knowledgeable and those sorts of things. So that is the situation. The fear of doing these things, going out and doing this marketing, is that you'll meet someone that knows more about it than you, or they'll be mean to you, or whatever the case. We kind of build these things up. I think most people have a little bit of that fear of like, oh gosh, I hate to go out there and I'm visiting them in their office, and who knows if they're going to be nice to me or ask questions and make me look dumb.
Yeah. You mean when our staff go out
Yeah,
and they do outreach?
yeah,
Well, I think the key then that we're talking about is know what you're talking about and then just be really, really nice
hmm
and listen when the other person talks. Sales is so much listening. Um,
that's something I'm really good at.
yeah. Are you being serious? I mean, I know you were joking, but do you think you're a good listener?
Yeah. So anytime, like obviously on here and stuff, I'm silly, but when I will go out and market for us, wherever that is, I do a lot less talking. I'm generally very quiet at these. I have a lot of confidence because I feel I have a strong knowledge of the industry and of our product. But
Yeah,
I,
there's
yeah,
nothing worse than a salesperson that would come in and all they do is talk the whole time.
sure.
How can you know what my needs are if you don't ever breathe long enough to let me
Right.
tell you about it? So I would, that's sort of our strategy too here within Village Caregiving. What I think the business development team preaches is you really have to be a good listener. That will sell the product. You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to be a nice, honest person. But then I think the biggest key to it is really honestly just listening to the other person.
Yeah. I've learned a lot from Ben in that regard of when we would go out and market together. Ben would not say a lot about village caregiving. He would just continuously inquire about what do you need? And is that something that we can fill? And I would go to, let's say, a long-term care facility, and I know that they're discharging a bunch of swing beds often, and they've got, grandma or grandpa going home often that needs help. And so I'm going to go in and tell them exactly, I'm going to be the one to answer the phone. I can get someone out to the house right away, blah, blah. And I remember one time we were at Oakmont Manor, a little long-term care facility with swing beds in Ashland, Kentucky. And we went in to meet the discharge planner. And I'm like, oh, I know this market. Like I know what they need. And Ben took the lead on it. And he just asked the lady, what is it that you need? What's your biggest struggle? And she's like, I can never get people home, like physically out of my building to their house.
Yeah.
She's like, they don't qualify for medical transport. Non-medical is expensive. Families won't come get them. I really struggle with that. And Ben's like, well, call me. We'll figure it out. We'll be able to get them home. Ashland had the VCG car. And so it wasn't, there was just opportunities listening to her that I never experienced or had thought of, but there were things that we could solve there. And many times I saw him do that where he'd be like, what is your biggest challenge? What do you struggle with? And it would be things that sometimes we can help, sometimes we can't, but it allows us to be their easy button. But you're right. If you come in and just talk the whole time, you're not getting there.
Yeah, and when we talk about listening, this is actually to me worth talking about. I find this really interesting. Maybe the listeners might not, but it's more than just listening in the traditional sense of the word, than stopping talking long enough to let them talk. That's not what we're talking about when we say that's good salesmanship. That's just good practice for life.
Mhm.
And I can speak from experience on this because I used to be, I'll just confess, a very poor listener. Probably one of the worst I ever met. I didn't mean it in a rude way. It's just that listening, in the sense I'm talking about it, is a skill that's no different than playing basketball or learning Microsoft Excel. There is a skill to being a good listener. So I can listen to what you're saying,
Hmm.
but there are practices that you cannot, you have to be engaged. You cannot be formulating your response while the other person is talking. And truly stop to try to achieve real understanding with that person. And that is not that easy to do. When you can do that, boy, does it unlock a lot of doors. And it actually, the best part of it is it makes you a happier person. And the kind of listening I'm talking about can occur in a business setting, but that can occur at home with a spouse, with your children, friends, anyone.
Sure.
Um, Yeah, sorry, I don't really know where I was going with that exactly, but just that
Yeah.
it's so, so important. It's made me definitely a better person and a better spouse. It really wasn't until maybe 2 or 3 years ago that I started to become much more intentional about that. And the funny part was, I was saying things like this to directors at our offices. Some of the directors listening to this might even remember that. But I had to admit to myself in those meetings, when I started talking about, in this meeting, we're going to spend 2 or 3 hours. We're going to talk about what's important at village caregiving, what our expectations are from each other. I want us to put our phones down. I don't want us to be thinking about what we're going to say next while the other person is talking. I want us to truly listen to each other and understand each other.
Right.
I said those right words, but at first, I don't think I was living up to doing what I was talking about doing.
You weren't practicing what you were preaching.
That's one way to put it. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I did this, I repeated the exercise maybe a dozen times at various offices. Quickly into those, I found myself forced to confront the fact that I wasn't doing a very good job of listening the way I was asking them to. And I made myself be more aware of it, stopped doing, bad listening practices. And I could tell within a week that I was more enjoyable to be around in my own house for my wife and kids because I was a better listener. Anyways, I've ranted on about this
Yeah.
for like
No.
4 minutes, but that's something that really hits home to me because it's a real thing.
I remember when that happened. I wrote it down on my phone. I said, "Jeff's more fun to be around now." So that's.
Well, I'm glad that it has benefited all.
When we're on this podcast, it's the same as being under oath, right? I mean, we're law-abiding citizens. We before we get on the podcast, the viewers don't see this, but we swear each other in, lay our hand on the VCG book of truth, and say that we're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
We don't do that.
We don't do
that
any of
is
those
the
things.
approach I take to it.
Yeah,
I want to be as authentic and honest as I can on here.
yeah.
That's the point.
All right,
Yeah.
so I'm going to ask you a hard-hitting question.
Oh boy.
Okay, are you
Give
ready
me
for
give me
this?
one of your patented. Oh
Yeah,
boy.
boy.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. All right.
Yeah.
Do you like me?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Well, the reason why I ask that is, so we have a lot of fun on the podcast. We have a lot of fun just generally in life. The podcast is a 30-minute clip often of a day's conversation that you and I have. Sometimes it's a little bit more specific. We'll go to the fishbowl. Sometimes we'll have a guest, but we can have this same conversation on the front porch, in your office. I mean, all kinds of places. But we have recently, both of us have heard some feedback that there was maybe speculation off some of our more recent podcasts. There was a level of tension between us that maybe you weren't a big fan of mine, or that somehow our friendship cracked.
They saw through
Yeah.
my act of liking you. I really no. I mean, I think that's because that's our sense of humor with each other.
Yeah.
Though. Everybody plays a slightly different role when you're
Mhm.
around different people. So I don't act the same way around my mom
Right.
that I do when I'm around you, or as when I'm around my wife, or when I'm around a stranger. But that's okay. That's
Yeah,
how life
absolutely.
is. And the relationship we have is just that we joke around a lot. We're really comfortable with each other. We can be kind of,
To the point we
mean to
will
each
occasionally get in trouble. about it. Like with Sarah or with Danielle, if they're around, sometimes we get started and we kind of get the that's enough.
Yeah. You've
Or
been on the phone for a half an hour. Could we please go to dinner? Right. No, I like
yeah,
you. Are you kidding me?
absolutely.
That's the ultimate compliment to any friendship is when you can just be horrible to one another, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So that, but most friendships don't record their friendships, right? So,
They don't.
no, this is not normal. That's for sure. But it kind of made me laugh because earlier today we were talking about some stuff, some appointments you have upcoming and things you have going on. And
Appointments.
well, you have meetings and you have another podcast appearance coming up soon.
Oh, okay.
And I was giving you crap about some of it, and you're like, "That's why I like you, because you say those things to me."
Yes.
That's just where our
exactly.
friend. It would actually offend me or hurt my feelings if we didn't do these things. So, but
The-
for the record, if viewers are worried about our friendship, stronger than ever.
Now I have this quirk about me, and this I learned this from a friend of mine named Chase. He really got me really good with just a great line, zing to me. Whenever you can call me out on my BS and it's in a way that's accurate and you really get me, I love it. I
Absolutely.
find you'll never hear me laugh any harder because I think it's hilarious. I
Yeah.
love it when that happens.
I was kind of roasting a friend the other day, and they would not roast me back. And I'm like, man, now I'm just mean. Like, if you're not going to participate,
That's what you got me for.
golly, it was tough. I was really giving it to him too, and
I step right up to the plate.
what did you accuse me of earlier? Straw man lies or
Oh yeah. Big exaggerator of every story. Then you start going, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just won't tell any stories anymore." So the straw man argument. Nobody's asking you to never tell a story again.
is that what you want?
Yeah.
Well, man, we are fresh off 4 regional meetings, 3 of which was hosted here at Barbersville at the home office and at the local Delta Marriott. And then the 4th was hosted outside of Chicago at Rosemont. And we had a like 99.8% participant. I don't know what the real number is, but nearly everyone made it to one of the meetings. And the feedback that we have from those is always, number one, it takes a little stress off me on the backside when these surveys come back and people say they really enjoyed it, found a lot of benefit. It wasn't a waste of time again. You always have that fear of like, do they think that this is silly or they don't want to be here? But the feedback was really, really great. And you had said on an earlier podcast, you look forward to these meetings because afterwards you get that recharge. You kind of power up from these connections.
Yeah.
Did you have that experience again?
I sure did.
Okay.
I found myself thinking about that exact thing. What is the nugget, the very core of the reason that it recharges you so much?
Mhm.
You'd say it's lots of different reasons, but you know what mine is? What's yours? Does it recharge you?
It does, and I'll be honest.
Why is that?
Yeah, when I'm in these meetings, and I'm not, I feel bad because I'm not like bragging here, but I work a lot for the meetings, and during the day of the meeting, I feel responsibility if the coffee's low or the lights aren't right or the temperatures. So it's a working event for me. But the joy that I get when I'm in the room and I see all the familiar faces, and some not familiar, but they're new and I know their names and I've been working with them some. I just get this joy of like, it's like a family reunion, or I've got all of my friends together. Like, I don't know that everyone feels that way. And I may be childish for feeling, but when I go into that room and I see everyone, like I was unloading at the Marriott to take in some stuff for the meetings. And I'm just like, I see some people I recognize. I saw the VCG cars in the parking lot from the different offices. I'm like, oh, they're here. And I really, really enjoy that. And I probably don't do a very good job of showing that during those days because, I'm trying to be ahead of any issues. But yeah, that's what recharges me, just the getting everyone together thing. I love it. It's I like reunions. I like family get-togethers.
Yeah, mine is similar.
Okay.
I asked you first because I know my answer. I didn't want to influence yours.
I guess.
But of course, the meeting is productive. I think that especially with some of the lectures about the CRM that's going to roll out this year, well, I won't get into it. There were productive lectures, and there are laughs along the way in the room. We have fun, lots of things. But the very nugget, the reason that I like it so much and it recharges me is because I just genuinely like all these people so
Yeah.
much. So whenever the meeting is ending, at the last one here in Chicago, I sat down with Mike Jones, Lacey Erickson, Emily Zander, Leslie Ludke. They're the Wisconsin crew from
Mhm.
the eastern and southern sort of part of the state, and northern, I guess, with Mike. But it had a great conversation. Just I don't get a chance to see them that often. I guess
Right.
what you're saying, like a family reunion. But when I do, it's not awkward.
Yeah.
It's great. And then I moved over and spent what I you actually brought my pork chop over to me because I had spent so long sitting there talking. My food was getting cold. Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
With Tyler Ebel and Shelby Mashburn and Kristen Dalton from the Eau Claire office. And I just sat there for what, 45
Right.
minutes having dinner with them. And it was terrific. I like all these people so much. My only regret is that there were some people in the room that I didn't get a chance to spend any time with.
Sure.
So Janelle McLean, today's her birthday, by the way.
Oh,
Happy
happy birthday.
birthday. Happy birthday, Janelle. And I texted her, and part of it was like, hey, sorry I didn't get to spend some more time catching up in Chicago. Have to do it next time, but it's gotten big enough where it's hard to spend that much time. And there are a lot of new people, like you said. But the reason that it feels so good, and that goes the same thing in the West Virginia meeting, the Ohio, the Kentucky, Indiana, all of them. I don't want to
Mhm.
leave any states out now. Maryland, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, they were all in here in Barbersville.
Right.
It's just so fun. I love sitting out here. We had him come back to the office and sit on the porch, spent a half an hour talking with Ben Sutton and a couple of rocking chairs. He's the newer director up in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Just great guy.
Yeah.
I could hang out with this guy and be his friend for the rest of my life.
Sure.
Like, and we get to work with him all the time. What a bad feeling it would be to go to a place where you just didn't like the people you worked with.
Yeah.
I don't have that experience at all. And it feels so good. It makes me happy, proud of what we've done and the people that we're able to spend this time with.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, like we said, three of the meetings were here local in West Virginia, and by the time I would get cleaned up at the hotel and get back over here, the porch would be full, the conference room would be full, people would be hanging out in different places, everyone's socializing. They had some card games going at one point, music, like, and you go by, and several folks that live here locally have referenced this within the community and been like, man, what is going on over at Village Caregiving? Like, everyone's hanging out, having a great time. And it's so cool to be able to share that with everyone. And we've gotten so much positive feedback about that. This definitely won't be the last time that we have, I think, meetings or conferences here locally, because it's just been, but it was such a cool feeling to pull up Main Street and see everyone from all the different offices here and hanging out. We're at a special place at a special time. I say that often, but I really do mean that.
I feel like they had a good time coming into Barbersville. Didn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
They were being a little polite, but it seemed like, having it here for the first time was a nice change up to the point where I think I heard you mention, should we have had all those other Midwestern and Western states actually come all the way to Barbersville too, instead of having it in Chicago? Because there was something to be gained by having them at headquarters. It's
Yeah.
hard to put your finger on, but I don't know. Does it make it seem more concrete that this is where these central operations happen if you've set foot inside of it?
Sure.
Now you sort of have, I'm big on this. So if Jeff Woods, for example, is sitting in Pittsburgh with Heather working, I like that I've been there because when I call, I can sort of mentally imagine what's going on.
Sure.
Because it's not just, it's more real.
Mhm.
So now I think that they have more of an image of how that is occurring in Barbersville, which I think is really neat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I won't. Well, I'll say it. It was Hunter. So I brought Hunter up. We were giving the Columbus team a tour of the headquarters, and I walked into our office, or up here in the top of what we've referred to as the castle. And we walked into my office, and he kind of like stutter stepped and looked around. He's like, "This is your office? I thought you were zooming from your house all the time." And I'm like, "No." So he, in his head, had thought most of the times that we were on a Zoom together that I was maybe working from home or whatever. So it just, like you said, just kind of recalibrating to get an idea of who works near who. It was cool. I think there was just a lot of positives from it. The community of Barbersville, by the way, shout out to them. They treated us amazing during that time. We brought about 100 people through from all over, I guess, 4 or 5 states. And they treated us great. The local restaurants were awesome to us. The local hotel staff was amazing. I think they did a really good job of welcoming everyone in, and have seen really the local kind of representatives of the area have been very positive about us having everyone in. So hopefully overall it was just a great experience.
I think so.
Yeah.
Barbersville's a small town. There's not a whole lot to do here, but they at least witnessed the friendliness and the people.
Well, cool.
That's neat.
Yeah. Well, man, so we spent some time in Chicago. All right. We went and saw Nora Jean.
Yep, Nora Jean Brusso.
Yeah,
look her up.
Nora Jean Brusso. We recognized her voice immediately from Kingston Mines when we walked in. She was on the other stage, so we couldn't see her, but we're like, that's Nora Jean. I ran over there and saw her. I was like, yeah, that's Nora Jean.
Oh yeah, she was there last time.
Yeah.
She brings the house down every time.
Amazing. She did a great job. You were right up front. You got right up front there with her.
Well, every single seat in the place was taken, so I was either stand way up front or way in the back. And I'm not shy, so I went up and got the best seat.
Absolutely.
Well, it wasn't a seat.
No, there was no seats.
I just stood in front of her.
Yeah, and yelled her name.
Well, she winked at me a couple times.
That is true.
Me and Nora Jean.
Yeah, you became part of the act
right.
with Nora. But prior to that, you and I had an experience that we had not shared before. And that was a live karaoke event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we've been busy since we flew home on different airplanes. We've had meetings. We've went different directions and stuff.
See, I start laughing because your whole face and voice changes. I know you're up to something and it's going to be completely full of crap. But where are we going now?
Well, I know you hadn't really got an opportunity as a trained music professional to really evaluate my skills on the mic.
Yeah.
And so you had that night, we were so busy and so much was going on that we didn't really get a chance to review my performances.
Are you going to ask me?
Yeah. Here and just us friends, it's just us here listening. If you were ranking me there, and 10 would probably be maybe Sinatra or I don't know, Elton John. I don't know who you would put as the very top. Who would be your top male performer of all time?
Best male voice?
Yeah.
It's hard to beat. Go on YouTube and listen to George Michael sing I Can't Make You Love Me. It's almost the most perfection of a live performance you'll ever hear.
Okay. And so that being 10, I understand there's not nearly enough numbers here to properly put me in where you would like to put me. That being a 10, and then somewhere at 0, maybe being someone that is born mute. They don't have a voice at all. Where would you on that scale? And be as I'm asking for real feedback because I'm thinking about American Idol this year.
Well, okay, I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh no.
If you'll be honest with me about one thing. After I answer this question, could we address maybe some insecurities that you have? I mean, you've now asked me, how was my singing? At one point, you just flat out said, do you like me? Right. I thought that your voice, it was hard to hear, and they were in this band box, and we were doing a lot of duets and goofing off and stuff. I couldn't hear you that well to give you a grade.
That's a plus.
But I will say that neither you nor anyone in there had one of those voices in a karaoke room where you're like, oh no.
Right.
I thought it was good. I thought you were good. Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't hear well enough to say if you're a 6 or a 10, but I'd say it's in the upper half of the numbers somewhere. You sounded nice.
What would, if I'm in the upper half of your numbers, you have not obeyed our oath, to be honest, on this podcast.
I said I couldn't hear that well. I tell you what I can hear right now.
Yeah.
Why don't you throw a couple lines of one of these songs you're always talking about?
Yeah,
sing. What was this guy?
Keith Whitley. Let's not say what was this guy.
Oh, like sorry, Keith Whitley. Star. What was the song called though? The one I knew.
Yeah, When You Say Nothing at All.
Yeah, give me just the chorus.
There is no way that would happen. There's absolutely no way.
Smart move.
Spotify would.
Right now, you're sounding pretty good because I've scored you between a 6 and a 10.
Yeah,
better to leave it.
Probably closer to the 10 now that I think about it. Mm-hmm. Well, man, it feels amazing to be back on the podcast. We're stretching into Q2. We have a lot coming up on the podcast. I hope that everyone can continue to tune in. We've gotten a lot of feedback. The analytics on the podcast, we have a ton of viewers, all different demographics, ages, spread throughout. So it really seems to be something that people are enjoying. I enjoy doing it.
I like that it's accomplishing what we sort of hoped to, which was to be a company newsletter that if you listen to this, you'll learn some about the business, but you'll learn some about the people that work here, what we're like, and what the culture is like. And I think that that's a positive. That so far, early feedback is I've enjoyed getting to hear some of that stuff. That's cool.
Absolutely. Well, man, it's been great. Cheers.
All right. Cheers to this water.
Yeah.